So you might want to start from the top.
All right, we're starting now. Like it started now. All right,
All right.
all right. But yeah, like I said, it will just be questions about Mageslingers and this game because I'd say they're both very like similar in terms of how they kind of appear. Because it's got wizards with guns and they're dressed in cowboy outfits in a way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, for one interesting question, I know you haven't played the game yet, but when the game was announced, was there anything that immediately caught your attention, like that immediately got you hooked in a way?
Oh, oh, absolutely. It was just setting in general. Um, Whenever I was hearing about Wizards with a Gun, and we saw it ever since, I think it was E3 back then.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what really caught my eye was, yeah, the Western music, the fact that they were using spells through guns, and the fact that it was a Western fantasy. That's already a very rare genre. Like it's becoming a little bit more prominent nowadays, but the
Mm-hmm.
concept I think is just so unique and just something that really needs to be explored more. And that's kind of why we're doing, Mage Slingers. It's a Western fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So the second I saw it, I immediately just gave respect to it because of the fact that it's a very, you know, very difficult genre to do, I would say, because you're trying to figure out, okay, what do we lean harder into? Do we lean harder into the fantasy or do we
Mm-hmm.
lean harder into the Western? And it's about finding a good balance between the two.
Right. I would say like it's a genre that has like people have tried to explore not just in like video games but also like movies and shows. I'd say like films that were similar to it could be kind of like a Wild Wild West, where it's not exactly like a western, but it is a interesting take on westerns, which you do see a lot. Like people try and take western art and turn it into something more modern, like mixing it the two in a way.
Hmm.
But Mage Slingers did do that, I would say, yeah, in a way. Mage Slingers also did do the same thing. They took western and combined it with more modern stuff and also very unmodern stuff in a very
Hmm.
similar way. But with Wizards with a Gun, I will say the first thing that caught my eye was the color scheme with the same genre, right? It's Western, but it's not like yellow, gray, and sandy and all of that. It's bright and vibrant with very artistic colors, right?
Right. Like you get plenty of, like the yellow, sandy and gritty feeling from it, from a lot, the environments that they showed in the trailer in particular. But you also see some of that more fantastical color scheme as well. So I think it was just a really good combination because you see plenty of both.
Right.
Um, and I think that's just really what leaned me in towards it because, yeah, I was just like, oh my God, I gotta see this game. I gotta try it for myself.
Is there any other game you've seen do something similar where like it'll take something that's usually like darker yellow or like this one color and then you turn it up on its head and make it like very bright and vibrant in a way?
Yeah, I've seen a couple games like that. I mean, I can't really name any off the top of my head, but I definitely know people have taken that art style before. In fact, there's actually a game that's also Western fantasy that I used to play all the time, and it was called uh, Wild West and Wizards, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was a game that was made in about 2020. It was in early access. It's from an indie company called Lava Boot Studios. And I often have told people that it was basically a game that was like, if it was Mage Slayers, but for that one, it focused, it was still great. It focused a little bit more heavily on the Western side of it, though, because you can't play as like an elf. You can't play as like, anything else. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
you're a human. The whole world is just humans and everything. But there's plenty of magic and wizards along with cowboys and everything in there. So before Wizard with a Gun, I'd say that was probably the biggest example I could think of. There's a couple other indie games that have done this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's a genre that's starting to get out there more.
Yeah. I feel like for me a game that's similar that takes a something that's not really like very vibrant and turn it up on its head. I would say kind of like Splatoon was sort of similar. It at that time you'd never seen like a shooter game that was very very colorful, and I'd say
Hmm.
they did it very well as well. So
Yeah.
I immediately had good faith in this game when it comes out. I do plan on playing it maybe and maybe buying it. I do plan on it, and I'm sure you do as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Is the genre itself like something you can find yourself getting lost in for a long time, like something you could see yourself diving really deep, like deeper than you would have in like D&D in a way?
Well, if it's something like if it's done like D&D, then yeah, you could easily get lost in it because you immediately start thinking about how does all of this work? You know, do they channel the spells through themselves and just into the gun like a wand, or do they channel it into the bullets? Enchanting them that way.
Mm-hmm.
Do they just enchant the gun itself, and there's nothing else channeling through it, or maybe a mixture of all of them? Like, what would happen if you did all of that? I
Right.
mean, there's so many combinations that you can do because there's so many mechanisms within, just a single firearm, and Magicka can just, be used in several different ways. Because it's not just, magic. You can also do stuff like alchemy with some of that stuff. At least that's what I've always envisioned, at least with Mageslingers as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like a genre like that is something not really a genre itself, but like the game itself is not something I could see a bunch of people like trying to like dig deep in like lore, which I think it may have some lore. Don't you think the game will like be including a lot of lore on like how all of it works and how like it got there in a way? I think it will definitely include something like that.
I think so too. There are people who I mean, sometimes some of that stuff is kind of glossed over,
Mm-hmm.
or other times, for the purpose of just focusing on the gameplay, or they do actually flesh it out. And I think Wizard with a Gun looks to have a lot of lore. I mean, like I said, I know that the game has come out by now. I haven't played it yet, and I
Mm-hmm.
haven't watched anything on it because I don't want to spoil it. I want to
Right.
play it.
I do the same thing with
Um,
Resident Evil 4 remake, which I do plan on getting very soon.
yeah, yeah. So I don't want to spoil myself. I want to find out. But yeah, it definitely does help though to have that lore to flesh out how everything works. And sometimes I would also argue that maybe the lore is left ambiguous and it's left up to your imagination with mastering the whole concept of show but don't tell.
Mm-hmm. Is there any game you think this one will be similar to in terms of like how the game will play, the mechanics, controls, and all that? Is there any game you think like it looks like it may be very similar to, but like in its own way?
Actually, considering that it's well, I think it's like a platformer, based off of the art style from the actual gameplay, like from the trailers I saw, it almost reminded me of Don't Starve in a way.
Yeah.
That's what it kind of looked like to me.
First thing I saw when I looked at it was I don't know if you heard about the game Cult of Lamb, which was a very popular like game for Twitch
Yes.
streamers and communities to all come together and play, to where they could all get involved in, where you didn't even need to download the game. I thought that was very neat. That's what I immediately saw when I watched the trailers.
Yeah, I was seeing a little bit of that. I mean, I've heard of the game, but yeah, I saw a little bit of that in there.
Yeah. Don't Starve as well. Isn't like Don't Starve also like not kind of the opposite, where it's not very colorful, it's more dark in a way?
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's very dark. It's very much so a survival horror-esque type of thing. Another game that I just simply haven't played. I understand that a lot of people absolutely love it though. And that's what I think is really appealing with a lot of indie games is, especially like this, is
Mm-hmm.
that they have so much creative freedom to do what they want and create the vision that they're wanting, without any influence. And, it just allows people to just go crazy with their minds as far as like, if there's lore, there's lore, but, if not, then they can just fill in the blanks and come to their own guesses. And I really like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can also be like that is a thing that can be swung both ways. Like indie companies get more freedom, but major companies get a lot more influence with more creative minds in a way.
Mm,
Which is all. I think
yeah.
both are really good. Both have their upsides. Both have their downsides in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a double-edged sword because I mean, yeah, on one hand, like you said, indie games they have more freedom, but they're also limited because they don't have all the funding that a major company would have. Because a major company, they can make very high quality stuff as well, But maybe they won't have enough time to put everything that they planned in there, or maybe something else is going on behind the scenes. We've seen this happen dozens of times with plenty of video games from AAA studios,
Right.
and we've also seen this from indie companies too. Sometimes they, unfortunately, crank out a shot at it, try to do the best they can, but some works of art, because video games are obviously pieces of art, some of them
Hmm.
just won't even be discovered, unfortunately.
That is true. Where would we be today if like some indie games never got discovered? Like imagine a world where no one knew what Undertale was. That'd be
Oh,
pretty interesting.
yeah, that would be really hard to believe nowadays,
Yeah.
because Undertale is like the biggest example of like an indie company going large. Same with Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight's a big one too.
Was Hollow Knight a indie developed game? I don't remember it being indie developed.
I thought it was. I don't know. Comment section, correct us if we're wrong.
That might also be because they might have like sold the name, which a lot of indie companies do. You know, they'll sell it to bigger studios like EA, Respawn, all these other big companies. That
Hmm.
might be what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, that's the other thing is that, there comes a point where an indie company becomes so large that it ultimately becomes a AAA studio. They make it to the point, that they're trying to get to.
Right. Have you played any other like game or games that remind you of what this game looks like that you've played? Like the style and mechanics and the way it all flows in a way?
Ooh. Oh boy, no, not really, actually. And I think that's what also drew me in is that I haven't played anything like that before. Like I said, the closest thing was Wild West and Wizards. It was a cowboy mage type of game, and but it wasn't anything like this. It was a first person shooter.
Mm-hmm.
So and also an RPG. But yeah, I think that's another reason why it drew me in
Right.
because
Would you say
yeah.
that is your like favorite game that's similar to this one in a way, from what you can see?
I wouldn't say it's my favorite game, within this genre, but it's
Right.
definitely one of the biggest examples that I can think of.
Yeah. When you saw the trailer and all the crafting and options they had that was looked very free and open, was there anything
Mhm.
that immediately caught your eye when you saw it?
The alchemy,
The
the
alchemy?
alchemy in particular, because especially in the trailers too, it looked like there was a lot of emphasis on it, and I really, really love alchemy. It's actually a concept that is often kind of weird in a lot of video games. Alchemy is either left being almost like an afterthought or very lackluster because a lot of people don't really know what to do with alchemy in a lot of RPGs. Even in D&D, I've played as an alchemist before, and a lot of it relies on just you simply crafting because otherwise you don't really have many abilities. You feel underpowered or something like that. It's always a weird class to try and balance, and we're trying to do that with Mageslingers, of course, because
Right.
I really want to put a major emphasis on alchemy as well because I just really love the concept. It's just very cool and underused, or well, not underused, but often a disappointing, I feel, in a lot of games is what I should say.
Is there any other things you think would be used in that game aside from like alchemy? Would it be like a certain crafting or like
Yes.
there is?
I think so. I mean, personally, another thing that would be great is using herbalism. I mean, I know that's kind of
Yes.
goes hand in hand with alchemy as well, but like, I remember in Red Dead Redemption 1, there was a bonus DLC called Undead Nightmare, if anyone remembers playing that. And there were points where you could make like phosphorus ammunition, I think it was, or like just phosphorus ammo in general, where you can actually make oh no, I think it was like holy ammunition or something.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, whatever you did, whenever you would hit the zombies in Undead Nightmare, they would just burn up in a blue phosphorus flame, and I just always found that so cool to see. Um, and I just absolutely loved that. So yeah, and you would get that from plants and parts and stuff like that. So I think seeing you just using materials from the land and just crafting bullets that way would also just be really unique.
Right. I feel like they kind of pushed that into Red Dead Redemption 2 in a way, because there's like different types of bullets you can get now, and arrows, which is very similar to what I
Yeah.
think they may try in Wizard with a Gun. I think that's something
Yeah.
they'll explore.
Yeah, and Red Dead Redemption 2, they did it a little bit with explosive and incendiary ammo, but aside from that, I don't think I remember much. And yeah, I think that's all because yeah, I played shit out of that game, needless to say. And that's actually the game that inspired Mageslingers.
Right. And aside from herbalism and Wizard with a Gun, is there anything you hope to see as a feature in that game that's not really exactly like alchemy or herbalism or specific types of cowboy stuff? Is there anything you'd like to see as a feature?
I mean, I'm sure I'm wondering if this is in there, but I'm actually wondering if there's like role play features. I would like to see more of the RPG aspect in there. Maybe creating your own character, or, stuff like that. I would just really like to develop, just develop the world in general, develop yourself as a character. I really love role playing, needless to say, because Eldritch Anvil, we do nothing but tabletop RPGs so far. So, yeah, I would love to see those kind of, game mechanics in there.
Right. I think one thing they may try, which would be very neat to see, is like you can make your own like cowboy gang of wizards, which would be really cool in a way.
Oh, yeah, like a
And
posse.
yeah, and maybe the story is you going against like evil ones where they use like dark spells in a way. I think that'd be very cool.
Yeah, I would love to see something like that. Almost like a PvP mode in a way.
Oh yeah, that'd be really cool. I think it's probably gonna be like an open world kind of like in a way Hollow Knight, but more open and spread out in a way.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It almost looks like Hollow Knight mixed with Don't Starve.
Yeah, because the movement around, like how you have a whole screen to walk around, it's not exactly a side scroller, but it's more of like a open world 2D adventure thing.
Yeah.
I feel like they may try that, and when I first saw it, I immediately thought of Don't Starve as well because of that exact playstyle, which we've seen a bunch of times now.
Hmm.
I will say it's also crazy to think how far side scrollers have come. Today we have games that look exactly realistic, like it's a real person, and we still have side scrollers and cartoony games today and pixelated games.
Yeah, but they're also just still well done. I mean, it's all, callbacks to when games really started getting out there with arcade games and all that sort of stuff. And I'm just really happy to see that we got a mix of pretty much anything for anyone who games or anything like that.
You can always have your own unique taste in whatever game you're looking for. Like for example, me, I love Resident Evil. It's
Hmm.
it's not exactly the shooting that I love. It's the horror, the story, the suspense, the lore that is not like incredibly deep, but it's still there.
Yeah.
And for you, it'd
Yeah.
be like Alien, I'd say.
Yes, very much so. With every Alien game, it always gives you something. I mean, for the longest time, Alien was just, first person shooters. Um, well, I mean, it was Alien versus Predator 2010. That was my first Alien game. Then it was a certain Alien game that I refused to give any attention to. Um, and then after that, it was Alien Isolation, which is, I would argue, to be the best one. But again, first
Right.
person shooter, technically, even though it was more survival horror. Um, but then we finally get a couple other games. I think there was Alien Blackout, which was like a Five
Hmm.
Nights at Freddy's type of game for mobile.
Which sounds like a good
Um,
idea on paper, wouldn't you say?
it is. I think how the reason why a lot of people started really getting upset about it, though, is that 20th Century Fox was teasing, well, essentially an Alien game, and it was going to be, an action game, and we were believing that it was going to be, Alien Blackout, but then when it was revealed to be a mobile game, everyone got upset, but, it was just kind of a misunderstanding because it's like, hey, we are still doing that action game, but here's this to tide you over.
Hmm.
So it was just not marketed well. So unfortunately, it just
Yeah.
got really panned. I haven't played it personally, but I mean, I still think, from what I've heard, it's okay. It's still fun, but a lot of people more so just got really upset though because, and this is valid. It's basically the a sequel to Alien Isolation,
Right.
and a lot of people didn't like that. Then fast forward a little bit, we had Aliens Fireteam Elite, which fun a third person shooter, but
Yeah.
not much content. And then finally, we have Aliens Dark Descent, which is, again, something new. They're actually trying new things in the Alien genre, or the Alien franchise, where it's a strategy game. And I'm going to be honest with you, Dark Descent is probably the second best Alien game, in my opinion. It's actually really, really good, and I absolutely recommend anyone should try it because it is so much fun.
Right. I will say that Alien is a little different than kind of. This isn't meant to like be rude or anything, but like Alien is very different from Western style titles. But I'd say they're both very similar as well in terms of like how you would get people to want to play that game or see that film, right? Because people like
Right.
sci-fi and there's people who like westerns. I'd say those two are very same side coin in a way, if that made sense.
Yeah, Western sci-fis are actually a little bit more known, I would say, than Western fantasies.
Mm-hmm.
Western fantasies, they're still getting out there, but, it's not like as widespread as something like a Western sci-fi because you have other pieces of media in there like Firefly, which was, of course, a Western sci-fi. Um, and then, yeah, with Alien, yeah, of course, Alien is very different from a Western, but you can find you so long as you have like the ability to, or the way of really recognizing how both genres work and combining them with like certain rules, you can pretty much make anything happen. I mean, we've seen Western sci-fis happen, so I mean, I've actually done this a little bit in Helios, which, without giving away too much, Alien Helios, it takes place on a desert planet. That's done on purpose. In fact, there's even there's some Western scenes that you think of whenever you're on there, like, the sunset with someone,
Mm-hmm.
riding off into it, or, you know, um, anything of that sort. I mean, there are certain nods to genres even though it's not a western, there you can always make nods to certain genres within it.
Right. Have you thought about playing the demo for Wizards with a Gun? If it had one, which I don't know if it did, but if you were
I would.
able to, would you consider playing the demo first before you bought the game? Or would you have enough
Um,
faith in the game to where you wouldn't need the demo?
I'd have enough faith to just go back into the game because it's one of those things where, like I said, as a creator for Mageslingers, along with the other dev teams, dev team people. Oh my god, I can't talk right now. Sorry. um,
It's alright.
Along with all the other developers, I just really think that we should support people who are also within that same genre. It's kind of how I see how the whole thing with Baldur's Gate 3 happened, where, a lot of companies were trying to, downplay it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, I'm sitting here going, dang, I should be taking notes from this. This is great. Because it's good. You want people, to make better games. That's what we should be striving for. So
Hmm.
for me, with Wizard with a Gun, I'd be like, dang, yeah, let's see how they do it. I want to support, good games. So, and games within a genre that I think is just, needs more attention.
Maybe with how good it gets, which I do think it will. I think it will get very popular with its demographic it's trying to aim for. I think maybe other companies will see this as an advantage to maybe try the same thing and maybe make a game very similar.
Yeah, there's always going to be clones for any type of game. It's always going to happen.
Right. Maybe we'll
Yep.
see certain games lean more into Western fantasy plus sci-fi in a way, which would be very nice to see.
That would be very interesting. Yeah, something combining all of that.
Right.
Um, I mean, it always happens. I mean, whenever a game comes out, it sets a standard for what everyone else does. I mean, think when Skyrim came out, everyone was doing open worlds. Like, sure, they weren't doing a fantasy setting, but everyone was doing an open world game. Like, that was the thing. That was our Baldur's Gate 3 back then.
Right.
So, I'm sure the same thing's going to happen with Baldur's Gate 3. It's going to set a new standard. And with oh my God, sorry, wizard with a gun, I'm sure it's going to set a new standard within the genre. At least I hope so.
I'd believe so as well. Would you be more excited to play the game by yourself for like a long break and relaxed weekend maybe, or with a pretty short time with some friends and have a lot of fun with it together? Would you be more interested in playing it basically by yourself or basically with a bunch of friends?
A little bit of both. I don't think there's really anything extravagant there. It just depends on my mood, but I'd be open to either.
Right. I can see the game having like different modes maybe, where like there's PvP modes and there's like team modes, maybe free for all, and then there's like posse versus posse, which would be very very neat in my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. If there's new modes that come out and people would be willing to play it, then yeah, I'd be like, hey, let's go grab the game and let's play. And let's do it.
All right. If there was anything you could personally add to the game with because it's a genre that you know a lot about and you're very interested in, if there was anything you would personally want to see added, what would it be?
I think uh, I don't think there's really anything else that I haven't mentioned. I mean, I guess maybe more details on like maybe some of the more mechanics of the world, not just with the guns, but maybe with the magic itself and the land. I hope there's details like that in there. So again, just more world building. I love that kind of stuff. Even if you don't explain it, just show it because I just think that would be so cool.
One thing I would be worried about is because with the scale that I believe the game is and how open it might be, there may be a chance that some of it may be too empty, which is something I would worry about. Because emptiness
Mm,
is usually a big issue with open world games. There's usually too much emptiness or it's too packed.
yeah, it's all about finding that balance because you don't want it to be so huge to the point where it takes you forever to get from point A to point B. In fact, I know that that was a complaint that a lot of people had with Death Stranding, actually. Now, I haven't played the game. I can't really speak for it, of course, but I do know that that was one complaint where, it took forever for people to get to one place to another.
hmm I have played
Uh,
Death Stranding, and I will say I personally like it because I think I do think sometimes games with like a slow burn and a calming atmosphere and quiet setting that Death Stranding had, I think it makes it a lot more enjoyable. But there's usually the question of like, is it better for something to be enjoyable or is it better for something to be fun? You know?
right. I mean, if you want to make a big world and have it be, very therapeutic, just relaxing and add that somber tone to it, you can absolutely do that. That's fine. But I think a lot of people were also, entering into Death Stranding in particular, with the thought that it was going to be, nothing but creepiness, it was going to be a horror game
hmm
when, it's a game that really takes its time. So I think that was another misunderstanding as well. I don't think it's anyone's fault or anything. It's just, that's just what it ended up being.
Right. I'd say it didn't lean too much in horror. I feel like there's a difference between like the game being horror and the gameplay being horror. Like, Resident Evil on the outside, like of a regular Resident Evil game, like Resident Evil 2, for example, let's just say that one, it's not meant to be scary, like if you look at it, but like when you're
Hmm.
inside and you're struggling because, like, you have no ammo and you're trying to run past them at a slow speed, then it's horrifying. But like, there's no music, there's no jumpy sounds and all that like in horror movies. It's just
Yeah.
there and you're there as well. And I feel like with Death Stranding, you know, everything in there is not made to be horrifying, but the idea that, you ran out of this, you ran out of that, you have to walk to do this because you broke this. And it's just like it's like you're human in a game. That's how I feel about it. Like I think that's what makes a game really scary and really good at the same time is that, you feel like you're that exact person because you can relate. You're human as well.
Yeah, because I mean, actually, you want to know what's really funny is one of my friends really put it to me in a great way as to why they always play as a human in D&D.
hmm
Because in a game like D&D, you can be so many things. You can be, an elf, you can be a halfling, a dwarf, a dragonborn, tiefling. You can be all these crazy creatures and,
Virtually whatever you want
unique.
in a way, right?
Yeah, yeah, you can be all of these unique designs and creatures, but he always chooses human. And I asked him why, and he told me that he likes underdog stories. A human, in the grand scheme of things, cannot typically overcome something like an orc or
Mm-hmm.
a dragonborn or a tiefling or all these other creatures like dragons and slime monsters, all these things. There's no way. So to see a human beat up all of these fantastical creatures that typically no one else in their right mind could even accomplish is just astounding.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he likes. And I actually got behind the idea because I'm like, all right, yeah, I see your point. Because, yeah, you're human. There's no way you can stand toe to toe with something like that.
And I think the idea that they end up standing tall to it shows them how they are, in a way, sometimes stronger, maybe,
Yeah, it
because
shows you that, again, like what you said, in relation to you relating to your character,
yeah.
it's like, huh, I could actually do that. I just need to, be smart and, be willing to basically fight to my last breath.
Yeah, I could fight zombies in an apocalyptic city that could be blown up anytime soon. I could fight wizards with guns.
Right. Yeah, I mean if I guess if you put your mind to it,
I'm gonna do
I
just that.
guess.
I'm gonna go right to my mom. I'm gonna say I want to be a wizard fighter.
You're a you're a hazard wary.
You're a wizard, Harry, and they're coming at you with guns.
Oh God. Fuck. I don't even want to imagine that world with guns. Anyway,
There's probably a funny
yeah, I don't
animation
know.
video about like Harry Potter with guns.
Well, I did see one edit where it was like in the very first movie when Hagrid goes up to like his aunt and uncle with like the gun pointed at him,
Hmm.
but they edit it at like so quick to where mid sentence they just shoot him.
Yeah, that would be
Um,
pretty funny.
but yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's kind of how I see it as just being a normal human. I kind of like the idea.
Hmm. Speaking of funny, is there anything you think would be like comedic in this type of game, aside from like the goofy cartoonish look that a lot of the characters and creatures have that you were able to see?
That's that's exactly what I was gonna say. I think it's just the art style itself. It's gonna be I like it that it's goofy. I like that it has that sort of charm to it.
One thing I do complain about a lot with certain like games or movies or anything like that is sometimes I'll say it's not goofy enough, because with like a horror movie, you want it to be scary, but there's times when you want that bit of relief, not just that like there's no scares gonna happen for a minute, but also like you could use a good laugh. I think that adds
Mhm.
to the horror because it's like you expect maybe this is gonna be funny, but also and then a few minutes later it's very scary, and you're wanting to go back to when it was funny. I think that adds like
Yeah,
very good scenery in a way.
I think one of the best examples of that would be Evil Dead 2. Um,
Yes.
Perfect example of both funny and it still being a horror movie.
Right. Because it leans towards like from the start to the very end, they're trying to tell you it's going to be scary. But in the meantime, they're giving you breaks for it to be funny.
Right, and I mean that can be said with the Evil Dead series somewhat. Well, I mean, some of the movies are more scarier than the others, of course. And I
Right.
know Army of Darkness, it's basically a comedy, but there
Yeah.
are some scary, like somewhat scary or more spooky. It's more spooky than anything else,
Yeah.
but it's still it heavily leans on the comedy. Meanwhile, something like the first Evil Dead or the newer one, yeah, it's heavily horror based. But then Evil Dead 2 kind of had that perfect mix, I would say.
Yeah. Speaking of horror, I know this game isn't made out to be like a scary game, but do you think there would be anything like horror related in a way to this type of game or just this game in general?
I don't see that. I'd be very surprised if they did have some like disgusting monsters or something like that in there. I mean, it's possible because I mean, theoretically, you can make anything scary in any art style. So I'd be very surprised to see them add something like that in there.
Do you think it's possible for them to make something scary?
I think so. I mean, if they really put their minds to it and really went all out, I think it's possible, even in that art style. But I mean, I kind of want to be surprised to see if they will pull it off, or if they did.
Right. Little Billy, if you put your mind to it, you can scare the socks off anyone.
Hmm. Doesn't matter what art style.
Do you think with the cosmetic system this game may have, you may be able to do more than just cowboys or just wizards? You may be able to do like a cyborg wizard or maybe like a alien wizard. Do you think that'd be possible from what you can see in this game, or maybe in the future with additional content?
I think that's something that would probably be additional future content. Like if they really, it almost to me it almost will seem like what happens with a lot of games where if it gets really popular, then they start adding more hats. I mean, the king of doing that is Team Fortress 2, where they just add a new hat every week. But I don't think they're going to get to that point, though.
Right. Do you think that I was gonna ask something. Oh right. Would you be worried about this game being pay to win with what you've seen from like the guns, all the different types of guns, all the different types of outfits that give you stat boosts possibly?
No,
Would you be worried about pay to win?
no, no, not at all. I do not get that impression from them at all. I'd be very, very surprised if they did something like that. In fact, that would probably, in this day and age, a lot of people are really starting to look into that and realize when it's there. And
Mm-hmm.
guess what? That happens to those games usually. A lot of people just walk out, and I haven't been hearing anything like that with Wizard with a Gun. I would be extremely surprised if they ever did something like that.
Right. Have you ever seen an indie game do something similar in a way?
I've definitely heard about it. I mean, usually a lot of the times, I think back in the day, it was happening because back then, having microtransactions in any game was nearly expected. You couldn't look at any game without seeing some sort of microtransactions. There were exceptions, but I would say like back in the early 2010s, like mid 2010s, it was really becoming common.
I'm kind of like keen to disagree on that. I remember back in like the 2010s and pre 2015, microtransactions were actually less common, and most of the stuff you achieved in the game was by actually leveling up or just earning it through challenges and whatnot. A prime example of that would be for me Titanfall. There was no real
Mm,
microtransactions. You just leveled up, played the game, and you eventually got all the stuff you would want.
that's true. Actually, back then, I would say a game. Yeah, I think back then the microtransactions were in the form of season passes, though. That
Yeah,
was huge back then. And Titanfall, the first game at least, was guilty of that. But Titanfall 2 really changed things around. And sure enough, Titanfall 2 ended up becoming one of my favorite games, actually.
right. I do like Titanfall. Mainly, what I loved about it was the perspective of how you could literally just randomly jump and you'd land on top of a Titan and just, rip out its battery. I thought that was really cool. And
Oh,
to
yeah.
me, it's incredibly neat.
Yeah. I thought that Titanfall 2, it just did everything right. It expanded upon the original in every way possible. It added so many new Titans, so many maps. It had a great combat system. It didn't feel unfair.
Hmm.
I just loved just about every aspect of Titanfall 2, even the story. Whenever people do a sequel to a game where it doesn't really have a story, it's almost like half-assed or just not done well. But the
Right.
story for Titanfall 2 was actually very good. Like
Yeah.
it's a story that I always love going back to and either playing or rewatching. It was just the exact definition of a sequel done right to me.
What I like about Titanfall's story is for the second one, it was around that time when we started getting games where like you play as the person who was not expected to do this certain thing, like Far Cry 3. You played as Jason, who had never killed anyone, and then he goes on like a rampage trying to like get revenge on the people who killed his brother. Titanfall 2, you play as a rifleman who has never piloted a Titan before, and then he does it and he becomes one of the best. It was around that time
Yeah.
we started getting games that were like that. Nowadays we don't. We don't really get that.
Again, going back to the whole point that my friend made, you gotta love underdog stories. You gotta love the story of it's just you're just a guy, and they're just far exceeding everyone's expectations.
Right. Would you think Wizards with a Gun would do something similar, like when you start out in the game? Like, you think you would start off as a simple beginning learning mage with a revolver, maybe?
Probably. I mean, I'd imagine that it's just like, yeah, you're just a single adventurer, making your way through this world, and over time you progress and become stronger. Um, and I just, I don't know, I really like that approach though, where it's just, you're just a normal person. There's nothing that special about you, but you work your way to become special. Like, I mean, even in the Alien RPG or just RPGs in general, sure, you have like a job or something that you're good at. You're not just a basic person who's not good at anything. But even those cases I like, because some of my favorite characters in media who are just not good at, in particularly at anything, at least no fighting skills or anything like that, just end up becoming some of my favorite characters.
Right. Also, important question. Who should Matt Mercer voice in this game? I think he should clearly voice every main character, or actually every
I agree
character
with
in the
that.
game. Yep.
I think so too. It's either Matt Mercer or
Troy Baker.
nothing.
What's his name?
No, I'm set on the fact that nope, Matt Mercer needs to be the voice of everyone, or I'm not buying it. I'm kidding, absolutely kidding.
But Matt Mercer should voice everyone. Clearly, I could see him. Like, what if we put his face on every character and like model them after him?
Just put his face. Oh my god, it's not even Wizard with a Gun. If you ever see this, please just take a stock image of Matt Mercer from Google
Give it
and
a
literally just
cosmetic. Yeah.
yeah, like give it as a cosmetic for a face for free, and just slap his face onto the character models.
And then
Like it's
maybe
just a paper cutout.
and maybe when you're playing as him or playing in the game with that on it, you hear like all your voice lines that would usually be like mumbled words or random noises. It's just him making those noises.
It's just a soundboard of Matt Mercer, just anything that he said, and they're
Leon
all out of
Kennedy.
context. Oh god, I would love to see that.
Speaking of voices and sounds and all that, do you think the sound work for this game will be good?
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be one of its strong suits, actually.
Right. What about, do you think there would be any voice acting at all? Like, I'm talking about like in the story, like a main villain that they would have like a really deep or high or monotone voice in a way.
I feel like it's going to be kind of if there are voices, it would almost be like mumbles or
Mm-hmm.
just sounds in general, kind of like how Hollow Knight does it.
I have an idea. You know what? That reminds me. I think I know a game this would be similar to in terms of story.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard of Castle Crashers?
I have not.
Castle Crashers is a game similar. It's a side scroller, very colorful. It's like night RPG in a way, like medieval
Hmm.
times, but it's very bright and vibrant and very similar to this game when I saw it, including the gameplay mechanics. I think that's what it will also be very similar to.
Right.
Is there
Yeah.
any? Oh,
Go ahead.
no, no, you go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you, honestly.
Ah, okay. Now let's move on to what we think may be negative about this game, which I know both of us don't think it will have that many, but every game is not perfect.
Right.
What do you think
Well,
from? Oh,
I mean, I guess the first thing I would say, yeah, sorry to interrupt.
that's all right.
I guess probably, I'm just a little wondering about like, hey, how will the replayability be? I think that's one of my concerns.
Right. From the trailer, from what you were able to see, was there anything you didn't really like think like, oh wow, that's like amazing, or like anything that like really doesn't grab you immediately from the trailer?
Um, Like I said, I can't really judge it because I've only seen videos on it and the cinematics, so
Hmm.
I don't really I can't really judge it. I think that's really the biggest concern that I have is just the replayability. I'm sure, it's going to be mostly good. I also do wonder, if there's going to be many bugs in it. Is the game going to crash? How stable is it? But those are kind of general concerns that I have for any game whenever it comes out.
Right. Would you be worried about them messing up the exact genre they're aiming for? Like if they were going for fantasy western, would you be worried if they messed it up and mainly stuck to just one like sci-fi or western?
Um, I mean, I don't know, because it really is up to the developer and writers. I guess how I would see it is that if they're marketing it as a Western fantasy, you know, um, then that's fine. But, there's kind of like this whole rule that a lot of people make where I think it's like the 70-30 rule in
Mm-hmm.
media. I probably got that wrong. But basically, what it is it's kind of like how I see it with Mageslingers. That's kind of the rule that I do, where it's a 70% Western and then 30% fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
It is still very much so a fantasy world, but it has a Western skin over it. Like there's still elves, there's still, all these fantastical creatures, but it is just an old Western. In fact, one of the biggest examples I can think of that is something like Treasure Planet. Anyone who remembers that movie,
Right.
it is very much so a private, not a private movie, a pirate movie, but you can also tell that it's very much so sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
Everything it looks like a pirate ship.
Right. Would you be worried about unfair like level advantages or disadvantages? Like let's say you start off as like a level 5 and you're immediately put in a world with like a level 50 or 60 or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah, I am kind of wondering about like how frustrating the game would get because you got to find a good balance. Because if you rely too heavily on the difficulty, then but it's just not fun,
Mm-hmm.
then that's when it gets into a problem. Because there's difficult games like Dark Souls where, yeah, it's difficult, but it's still fun enough to where you want to keep trying. But if you make it so difficult and to the point where it's aggravating, now you got yourself a problem.
Right. I would say that like trying to make sure one genre is like mainly focused on over the other is something many game studios do in a way
Hmm.
on accident. Like they don't try and make it to where it's mostly Western and not a lot of sci-fi or mostly fantasy and not a lot of Western. They try not to do
Right.
that, but like with how it is made and how it is set up to be with how the player is going to play, it's going to end up being one or the other. And I feel like most companies don't mean to do that, especially indie companies.
Yeah, it is something that a lot of people, you know, it's a hard balance to find. I'll even admit it. With Mage Slingers, it is somewhat difficult to do for us at times because we're like, hey, how much until it's become too much of a Western? When Mage Slingers first started out, back when it was not called Mage Slingers, it
Mm-hmm.
was very much so more of a Western. The fantasy influence was not very prominent. And and that's because my inspiration for it was Red Dead Redemption 2, which
Mm-hmm.
has no magic in there. It's very much so a realistic take, oh well, a semi-realistic take of a Western. And that's kind of what I followed. So the magic just wasn't really, it was there, but it wasn't as prominent as I would have liked. And,
Right.
it's always a struggle to find a good balance.
Right. I feel like with Red Dead Redemption 2, since they did have one main genre to lean on, they were able to expand it based on what the player wanted to see. So, would you think that for this game, if a player wanted to see more sci-fi or, like you said, more alchemy and herbalism and all that, if the player was able to expand on that, would you be worried that there's something the developers made to where they weren't able to, like they forgot to include that they could do this instead, or they should have added this?
Yeah, I think so. When you're developing any kind of game, you want to make it your game accessible.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big thing. If you make it to the point where it's not easy for a newcomer to get into it, then they're going to run away. They're not going to pay attention to it.
Right.
They're not going to, because a lot of people always say this, or make this argument with free to play games in particular, where it's like, hey, is it worth getting into it? And people think that it's just as easy as just downloading it and getting into it.
Hmm.
But the thing is, with even a free to play game, there's always the added risk of spending your time on something like that. Especially after whatever it is you do in life, devoting time to it to learn something new. So there's
Right.
always that to take into consideration. Be like, how easy do you want to make it for someone to get into something new?
Right. I agree, but it's very hard for a company to give what the player wants because sometimes the player is never sure what they really want in like the game they get, right?
Mhm.
Because
Right.
whenever I play Resident Evil, there's sometimes when I really want horror, but there's also I really want survival, or I really want action, or I really want this or that.
Right.
Would you
It's finding a good
see?
balance.
Yeah, would you see Wizard with a Gun getting a sequel that focuses more on one, like for example, fantasy over Western, and this one would be mainly Western over fantasy? If so, how long do you think it would take for them to actually make that sequel and make that jump?
Oh boy. If they made a sequel, I'd say it wouldn't come out until like another 3 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Um, but if they wanted to make a sequel, I'd say they should probably just go based off of whatever the players majorly wanted, because whenever
Hmm.
you take in any feedback, whether it's positive or negative, you take it all in and apply it to whatever your next project is. And I think that's what they should do here.
Right. The mind is a machine reading each and every review and trying to make sure it's all up to the player's liking.
Yep, even some of the even if you run into like a review that you do not agree with, or maybe people would think that it's dumb, quote unquote dumb, or poorly judged, I should say. um Even if you run into something like that, you still take it into account to be like, okay, is this something that we can do, or is plausible, or is necessary? So you got to take all the feedback in, no matter what.
Right. Do you think there's something, or is there something you could guess that other players would not really like about the game from what you were able to see? For example, like
Um,
the crafting is like limited to just this, or there's not enough of this. There's something you can see multiple people complaining about.
Probably, I guess, maybe limitations with, yeah, crafting, skill trees, if they have them. Maybe some limitations with, progression. You never know. There can always be anything like that with any game.
Is there something with the genre you think not a lot of people are interested in, mainly with Western fantasy?
Well, I think that's kind of the thing is, well, I mean, fantasy is a little bit more of an open term, so, and fantasy, especially with Baldur's Gate 3 out and everything, it's a much more, I guess it's more widely known. Well, no, not widely known, but more appealing to people.
Right.
Westerns are typically not for everyone. A lot of people usually say that, but then you get a diamond like Red Dead Redemption 2, or
Mm-hmm.
a genre defining game, and then it brings it out of retirement, so to say. I mean, Skyrim did that, Baldur's Gate 3 did that, Red Dead did that, Spider-Man PS4 did that with superhero games.
Right.
Same with Batman. There's so many games that you can think of that were genre defining.
Would you think that Wizard with a Gun will be genre defining, not just for the Western fantasy style game, but just the art style, the gameplay style, and the exploration style that it already has?
Yes, I hope so. Because Western fantasy in particular, I think it's actually the technical term is called genre busting, because it's combining two genres that normally do not go together.
Right.
So I guess the better way to put it is I do hope that this genre buster of a game does actually really get well known. I hope so.
Right. I think it would deserve that based on what I've seen and all the work that was probably put into it.
Hmm.
Right. Uh, Is there any type of music you think would be used in this game specifically?
I think it's going to be a mix between Western and fantasy music. We heard a little bit of that, through some of the bits and pieces that we've seen,
Hmm.
and I can really see them doing something like that, where they just, make remixes of the two, because that in doing so, you create something new, and I like that idea.
Right. Uh, do you think that there would be moments where they don't really use either of those styles of like a music type, where they like there's an action scene and they use something that sounds Western but is used with like an electric guitar or something?
Oh my God. Absolutely. I mean, we've seen that a million times. I mean, Rango actually did that where, they added electric guitar at one point
Yeah.
to the Western theme of the movie.
Right. Imagine if in Red Dead Redemption 2, when Arthur and Lenny are getting drunk, you just hear very fast, like Metallica Master of Puppets or something.
I mean, we kind of hear a little bit of that. They use a lot of guitar in their music
Yeah.
from Red Dead.
And I think it's very interesting. Do you think like music will be prominent in gameplay? And I talk about music a lot because, I love music. I play a lot of instruments and all of that, and I love music in
Hmm.
games. I think that what I liked about Red Dead in a way was you could also play instruments. If I remember right, you could play like certain instruments, not just in single
Yeah,
player but also in online. You could play
yeah, you could.
instruments. Yeah, and I like that. Do you think this game would let you explore that if you were interested?
I hope so. I hope it'll allow you to choose some music because I really do think I'm in agreement with you. Music really makes or breaks a game.
Hmm.
Like a soundtrack is good when I select the music for my own spare time just to rock out to or vibe to.
Hmm.
And I mean, I got that plenty of times with so many games, where I just needed that fix.
You probably had Unshaken from Red Dead Redemption 2 in one of your
Oh dear
playlists.
God, no, no. Okay, that one I would put on there if I wanted to be depressed. I do not. I don't want to listen to that one.
You'll probably get the Lenny and Arthur Bar music then.
Oh, that one's classic. Actually, the American Venom theme was my favorite from it.
Yeah, that too. I want.
Oh yeah.
We gotta get footage of you playing one of your campaigns, and there's a scene where you guys are going crazy. You just got Lenny over the background.
No, even worse. If I really wanted to, just be evil, just play the song with spoilers for anyone who hasn't played Red Dead, but
Hmm.
like you play the song from Arthur's Last Ride, the Shine Light in the Darkness, that
Right.
one. My God. Okay, I can't listen to that song without, just being like, yeah, I need to go over to my bed and cry.
Yeah, every game usually has like one of those, but I think Red Dead was really one of the first games to ever emphasize like a sound that you would really recognize because the characters developed so well that when you hear this song, you just immediately think of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's like when you go to a like a dance party and you hear YMCA, and the first thing you think is just do the dance moves.
Yeah, pretty much.
When it comes to again, this is back to the sound effects question, but like, would you be worried that they would use a sound effect that sounds like really common, like when they're throwing like a potion or something, you hear that very similar like splash sound that's used a
Oh
lot
yeah.
that would probably get irritating if you heard it enough. Do you think this game would have that effect?
Probably not because it does look like a crafting is a big deal. So I think a lot of the sounds will be drowned out by like the different effects of, potions or magic. So I think that'll also help.
Right. One thing I do think they may try is like each hat is like different abilities or different upgrades for each character because I know in the trailer there's like scenes where it's each of them with different hats and they all do different things. Maybe that may be what the game focuses on a lot.
Mm, yeah, maybe. I'm not really too sure, honestly.
Right. One thing that is neat is what's it called? From what I saw is the weapons. Do you think the weapons look very western for the western fantasy that it's aiming for?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you got a bunch of like weird designs. It almost looks like it's a mix between like blunderbusses and flintlocks and all that kind of stuff. But you also have plenty of that, Western type of look. So you have something that looks old, and it kind of works because when you think about magic and fantasy, it's something that would technically be there from the beginning, while firearms is something that is generally new. So you're combining something old and new, and you should also apply that, with firearms, because that's basically going to act like your wand in a way.
Right. Do you think that the cosmetic system with not just hats but outfits will be like less than it'll focus on with like hats mainly? Like I know for your character Rusty, he's got like the robotic look and all of it and the cowboy hat, but he's also got like human attire, right? Do you think this game would be not focusing enough on the lower attire than it would be just the hat and the weapon?
No, I feel like the customization will be there. At least I hope so. I've also seen that there are some slightly different customizations based on how many players are there, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about how that will work, to be honest.
Do you think would you be worried about like you joining a world and it being too overwhelmed with a bunch of characters or players?
Oh, no, like I'm trying to see, hey, how would they handle the clothing, if everyone wants to look the same, like that kind of thing.
Right. Let's see it when we have everyone dressed up in a rusty outfit.
Oh my God, if only. If only.
Here's another big question I wanted to ask. Is there anything you saw from the previews that really made you think or reminded you of the Mageslingers?
I mean, aside from the actual, firing off guns with spells and the music and the setting, just the entire thing. I mean, whenever I see a Western fantasy, I just think of Mage Slayers. And I just immediately was thinking of the characters from the game, and how they interact, how they fight, and how it would look as opposed to Wizard with a gun.
Right.
Yeah, because I'm just like, yeah, that looks really good. That looks like how some of them would fight. And I just really love those kind of aspects that they put in there. Um, so yeah, I mean, I just saw Mage Slayers plastered all over there.
Right. Was there anything that reminded you of like your character, Rusty, apart from the amazing cowboys with spells and guns and looking really cool, I will say, and colorful?
I would definitely say probably the very first trailer that we got,
Mm-hmm.
where it was the guy in the cage and the wizard pointing the gun at him, ready to kill him.
Right.
I was just imagining, yeah, that's kind of like the classic Western type of thing, with a duel where, two people are staring down at each other, ready to kill each other. And I'm like, yeah, that fits a Rusty because, I mean, just the eyes alone, like the blue eyes
Mm-hmm.
on one of them, it was just like, yeah, that's my boy. um, that's our boy. Um, so yeah, I mean, because that's the thing is Rusty to me, he represents everything that I love about a Western fantasy and a little bit of sci-fi, of course. I mean, you definitely see that. He
Right.
represents my three favorite genres, pretty much put into one.
Right. One thing that would be interesting is if you were able to do like your own mini campaign or RPG style event, maybe. Would you bring it to Wizard with a Gun if it was like one day it was free for a day and you'd have a bunch of people join in to play it and
Oh
you
my God, I
customize your
absolutely
own?
would.
That'd be amazing.
Absolutely.
I would love to join it as well if they ever did that. That would be great, personally.
If any company, like that was wanting to do some sort of event with me, I would absolutely love that.
That would be amazing. Is there any controls you would be worried about or interested in? Like, is there a movement that worries you in the game by chance?
I don't think so. Like I said, I think that just kind of goes back to the gameplay standard of like, how frustrating will it be or how accessible will it be? So,
Mm-hmm.
to be determined, I guess.
Right. All right. Well, I think that will probably do it for the interview questions that I had with you. I want to thank you for joining very
Yeah,
much.
thanks for bringing me on here, Venomous. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. If you have anything to plug, you can. But one thing I will plug is that everyone watching, you can all check out Eldritch Anvil, the new D&D brand. Was it? It's a brand in a way.
Yeah, so I mean, I can go over it a little. Hey everyone, I'm Mitchell. I am one of the developers from Eldritch Anvil, and yeah, we're a new, basically a tabletop role-playing game team, or TTRPG, of course. We mainly develop that. We are focusing on three projects, which are Mageslingers, the Western fantasy game, a fan-made game, that one's non-for-profit, which is Alien Helios, and then another project that is mainly run by another one of our developers, Kevin, which is called Odyssey of the Oberon, which is a pirate fantasy. And yeah, we like to do a lot of tabletop role-playing games, develop them, and just come up with all sorts of wacky ideas, and just continue to be amateur game developers. Making our way through everything.
If any of y'all are interested in checking out any of what he has promoted or any of his role plays and RPG and tabletop games that he has promoted, I will have all of them linked. And I want to thank you again for coming on. You and
Yeah, and
everyone in the Mage Slingers are amazing. As a few of you may also know, is that one of people who has done art for me is in the Mage Slingers. They are always linked in every video of mine. Each artist is
mhm.
linked and credited. And once again, thank you, Mitch, for joining.
Yeah, thank you again. And also for everyone also watching this, make sure you like and subscribe to Venomous. He is a wonderful content creator, genuinely great guy. I really do think you guys I should take a look at his stuff. He is just a fantastic. And yeah, that's really what I want to say. Just really great guy. Give him all of your attention and respect because he deserves it.
Thank you very much. Also, one more thing. Me and Mitchell have done some content before. We have done a Golf with Friends video, which will be
Oh boy.
popping up right there. We may do more in the future where I am probably not as bad at golf as I was in that. But again, if you want a good laugh with Mitch and the Mage Slingers, you can go ahead and check that out as well.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, y'all.